That's what's being sacrificed in some cases. Does this help you see where your frequent network is? This kind of map that just blasts you with complexity. My God, look at the numbers of, I mean, there are 6 route numbers on Robie Street. That looks like lots of service, but we don't know what a route number means. We don't know what that adds up to. So what if it were this simple? This is the transit map of my hometown, Portland, Oregon, where I grew up. I've lived in lots of places since then, but this is where I grew up. And I just want you to notice on the map of the inner part of Portland, Oregon, that almost every street has exactly 1 line number on it. It is as simple as it can be, given that the city is that size. They have been, and the whole trend of the history of transit in Portland in the last couple of decades has been a steady reduction in complexity. The number of line numbers has been going down as the quantity of service goes up. It is about simplifying, simplifying, simplifying. Whenever a transit agency brags to you about how many lines or routes they have, remember they're not bragging about their service quality or quantity, they're bragging about their service complexity. Right? So what if it were this simple? Well, there's a difficult trade-off about it being this simple. Because when you have just 1 line on every street, and these lines are all pretty frequent, they are so frequent that they're easy to transfer to and from where they cross. But nevertheless, in a grid pattern, if you're not going to points that are on the same line, you do have to transfer. And so the transition to this kind of pattern is a very difficult process of prying people loose from particular patterns that they're used to making without transferring. And that's hard. I've been doing it as a consultant for 20 years, and it's hard. The only reason I put myself through it is that I understand that it's geometrically unavoidable. If you want frequency, and if you want a network that's simple enough that you can keep a lot of it in your head, you've got to embrace the possibility that you're going to have to transfer more than you do now. That's really the essence of it. I'm going to skip through this the rest of this and just come back to the final point, which is that when we build a network around, come on, get back to it. Just wanted my penultimate slide here. There we go. When we get back to a network that is built around connections, what we're buying is simplicity. We're buying frequency. Notice that where interchange points occur, we have points of remarkable opportunity for land use. And so we have support for dense urban nodes, especially around interchanges. But another thing I recommend very strongly that this region doesn't do yet is that your long-range plans, even 5 or 10 or 15 years out, should have a map. Here is where we expect high-frequency service to be. Draw it down to the street level. Why? Because then your land use planners and everybody in the city who's making a decision about where to locate anything can have that map on their wall when they're doing their work. And we can start to get a more rational process where anything that values transit should get onto that network. And actually anything that doesn't value transit, a golf course, should ideally locate not on that network. And we could start to get a better fit between the transit network and the shape of the city. A lot of architects will tell you, but the city is the thing and transit is just a service. Obviously we'll lay out the city and then the transit people will figure it out. That doesn't work. It is actually a mutual relationship. It is a chicken-egg relationship. We both have to work together, and when we do it right, nobody will care who went first. So with that, I just want to wrap up. Let me emphasize very strongly that this idea that the core of your city is really the thing you're going to have to focus on. If I had a little more time, I'd draw you an interesting chart that shows that actually the demand for transit as you go up in density rises faster than density, which actually means you have to be biased toward the denser parts of the city to even just avoid overcrowding, quite frankly. The interesting thing about that, though, is that although that seems to be a justification for not providing too much service to rural areas, there is another curve that cuts directly opposite that curve, and that's the curve of highway needs per capita, which are, of course, very, very high in Sambro and very, very low in the Halifax Peninsula. And if we could ever actually, some province or state is going to do this someday, is going to just say, by God, there is one transportation budget. And we are going to be reasonably equitable in distributing the whole transportation budget. And in rural areas, that will be spent mostly on roads. And in the Halifax Peninsula, it will be spent mostly on transit. And it is all one thing. Some province or state is going to do that. Not sure who yet. Thank you.
Thank you, Jarrett, Stephen, and Frank, for some very interesting presentations. I really wish we could give you more time because I'd like to hear more, but we need to get into the second half of our session tonight. We are running about 15 minutes behind schedule, but I think it's important that we give the two group discussions the time that you need, the 20 minutes that we had planned for. So unless we hear any loud protests from the crowd, I'd like to go about 15 minutes beyond our sort of 8 o'clock scheduled finish. So we'll just jump right into the first group discussion question. So in the first group discussion, this is what we'd like you to think about. What role do you envision for public transportation in the future of HRM? And think about some of the actions, the short-term actions, perhaps 1 to 2 years, and some of the long-term actions, maybe 5 to 10 to 25 years that will be required to achieve that vision. So we're going to ask the three panelists to circulate amongst the crowd. You can flag them down if you have any questions. They're going to try and sort of spur on the discussion. We'll give you 20 minutes for this discussion. In the last 5 minutes or so, we'll sort of remind you that we're interested in having each of the tables come to some consensus on your top 3 or 4 ideas. We can be flexible about the number. I don't know what the right number is exactly, but 3 or 4 ideas, and write one idea per cue card down, and then some of my colleagues will gather those, and then we'll shift groups and move on to the second question. Okay?
Are we including things like bike lanes in public transportation? Because it's really not. It's more equivalent to a road or a car. But
Sure.
Yes. Yeah. Vehicle is just an undersized vehicle.
That's true. I mean, we're not going to say no. Don't talk about bikes. That's fine. That's fine. I mean, the focus, I guess, of the session is really more about public transportation. I guess in more of the conventional sense. But like we heard from our presenters, other multimodality is a key to a system and a network that works. So we need to think about cycling and how that connects with other modes of public transportation. We need to think about walking. Those are, and the integration of those modes. Cyclists take buses and they take their bikes with them. They use their bikes on either end of bus trips. So, yeah, I would say that certainly should be part of the discussion.
That was awesome, by the way. That was awesome.
So, do you need to do people need to be herded into fewer tables or managed, do you think?
Yeah, possibly.
You gotta let some people leave, too.
I meant to.
What I tend to do is
I think if you find yourself at a table with only a couple of other people, you might want to move to another table and join a larger group.
Right.
Where's the appetizers table?
right. What about the drinks?
Yeah, exactly.
No open bar? That's you.
He's Halifax, so he's not with us. he's
Because if you were going to get the video out of it, I would want to see it
Well, it'll be available
on their website.
on their website. Yeah, they'll have an archive.
It was good.
Oh, thanks. Appreciate your comments too. Give it about 5 minutes for them to organize themselves. Yeah. We go.